I have an enormous compassion and love for human beings. I understand them and want them to be at their best. I can't stand it when I see someone who is not doing the best with what they've got. Okay. And so and I also really love them. And so since I love them and I want them to be at their best, and I can see a better way for them to be at their best, I tend to be a really helpful advocate to help people be the best version of themselves. That's the thing that matters more than anything else.
Hi, Monty. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
No, it's great to be here, Grace.
I have to say, like, after reading your book or listening to it multiple times, I really feel like you are a person who is like genuinely care about people. And from being like a great lawyer to being a great leader, I feel like there's a journey that's really needed to be heard by the audience. So today I wanted to, starting the episode by letting people know more about how you grew up and how you got into the law firm and then the Chipotle scene.
I don't know how much of the story you want, so feel free to interrupt me anytime. But I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and I had wonderful parents. My dad was a cell biologist, as I mentioned in the book. My mom was a psychologist. Both of them were very, very interested in talking about all things spiritual, all things geographic, all things biological. They were really interested in the world and the people in it. They were not interested in politics. I never heard them talking about politics, or very, very seldom heard them talking about politics. They weren't interested in the television. They weren't interested in media. They didn't have magazines. They didn't have normal media magazines around the house. They had National Geographic. And my dad had the Falconry Association books, the North American Falconers Association book, NAFA, because he was really into falconry. And they read lots and lots of books, but they were always books on either spirituality or something specific that they wanted to learn. Like my dad was reading about woodworking, or he'd read about making knives or making musical instruments, and a lot of falconry stuff. So they were really interested sort of in the physical world and being part of it. They did lots of hiking and sports and tennis, and we went cross-country skiing all the time. And so we were a very outdoorsy family, lots of camping, lots of being outdoors. And so it's funny, I grew up watching almost no television. So when I was in school, people would talk about, oh, did you see this? Did you see that on TV? And I was always the guy who's like, no, I don't even know that show. So I grew up, watching very little television. And my dad was a very, very great musician. So he played lots of musical instruments. He had band over to his house every Wednesday night. They'd play music together. So I grew up with a lot of music in the house. And my parents, every night we'd have dinner, and they'd light candles. And it was always, we'd have dinner as a family together every night. My dad would shove the phone in the drawer so it couldn't interrupt us. And we'd have these very sort of solemn dinners every night as a family. Lots of candles. My parents had a very romantic relationship. They would tell each other they loved each other all the time. It felt like a very warm place to be in my family. That's the kind of upbringing I had. Now, that's not the whole story, because there were difficulties, of course. And my dad was actually a bit of a loner. He didn't he loved people individually, but he didn't like, humanity. He didn't like traffic and waiting in line, and he hated shopping. He was actually wanted to live in a teepee, like an American Indian. He always talked about wanting to be like a Native American, living in a teepee. And that's what he really wanted. And he actually had a teepee in his backyard for the last 20 years of his life. And he'd go back there, and he had drums and all. He was really interested in shamanic stuff. And it was a very interesting family to grow up in.
But I feel like you sounds like the opposite of him. You love chatting with people. You love people. You literally talk to all your employees. Like when you were working in Dairy Queen, you would talk to homeless people. I feel like you're kind of the opposite of your dad. Instead of, living in, a place that nobody can find, then I feel like you're just like a more different people than I feel like, someone who doesn't love people.
It's funny. I think I've got a huge amount in common with my dad, but I am more social for sure. You're absolutely right. I mean, my dad was very social one-on-one with one person or two people. And I love being with one person or two people. I like the intimacy of being with one person. In fact, I would say that my relationship with humanity is sort of one person at a time. Although sometimes many people at a table, but when I look at each one, I feel like this huge connection with that one person, and then a huge connection with another person. And I don't feel like when I move my connection from one person to the next that I forget about the other person. So there was an intensity about my father which made him a bit intimidating. And I'm told that there's an intensity about me that sometimes people say that's a bit intimidating. I guess I am very intense. I'm not a person who, if I'm paying attention, I'm paying like a lot of attention, and I'm really listening. And I'm not just listening because I think words are basically totally misleading and generally unhelpful. The words somebody speaks are only a very small part of what I'm actually gleaning from them when I interact with them. So there's, hundreds of thousands of little judgments going on, just like there are between any two people. You're looking at whether they're smiling or frowning, whether they're sitting forward or leaning back, whether they're excited or bored. I always notice it when you see a lot of things, people like giving a speech at the beginning, maybe they're a leader in a company and they say, yeah, I'm really excited about what we've got going on. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're not excited at all, so don't even talk about it. Find something you are excited about. Talk about that. But anyway, yeah, so that I find fascinating is communicating with people. And when I communicate with people, I think it's, being with them, just actually being with them is where the vast majority of the communication arises, not from the words. The words are just a little almost distracting part of the conversation with somebody.
I feel like you're one of the few people that I really feel like have a really high EQ, just because like I've heard CEOs that are talking about, how they were focusing on like the number instead of talking to their employees. They've made a big mistake, but I feel like you kind of avoid these mistakes like right on. You went to Chipotle, talked to all the employees, like fake yourself into the training program, just be like pretending you're one of the managers. I feel like those stories are amazing stories that I've heard from your book that I feel like really resonate with me as a regular person.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it's funny if you thinking about money, talking about money, wishing for more money, loving money. All of these things are entirely ineffective if what you want is money. You won't get money by doing those things. You won't get money by talking about money, thinking about money, adding up numbers, doing spreadsheets. None of those things make money. It's like, even if you're an investor in the stock market, how do you make money in the stock market? Well, I guess you could say, well, you pick winners. Okay, you pick winners. How do you pick a winner? You don't pick a winner by watching what goes up every day, right? Because if you watch what goes up every day, you didn't invest in it yet and you missed the boat. You have to pick a winner. Well, how do you pick a winner? You find companies that do something really well that you think a lot of people are going to want and that you think are going to grow and grow and grow such that even more people want their services, and perhaps a company that's going to create more and more and more services that more and more people want.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think those are like great philosophy that everyone kind of ignores. So like I've heard about like a lot of younger people talking about like, oh, I want to achieve a certain standard. Like, for example, I want to turn like, I want to raise this amount of money or blah, 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 or I want to get on this list or something. And like, I feel like those are really bad measurement just so.
They're terrible. I always say, a lot of people come to me now, hundreds or more than hundreds, come to me, hey, would you be willing to invest in my company? When somebody comes to me and one of the first things they're talking about is how they're going to make lots of money, and they're in a very, very small stage, they're in an early stage, I almost always think, oh, that's a huge red flag. If somebody comes to me and says, we're going to make this incredible product, which is going to change the world. Okay, I'm going to listen, or if somebody's going to say, hey, we've got this service we're going to provide that's going to make people's lives better or make the world a better place or clean up the environment in a way that's really effective, whatever. If people are passionate about accomplishing something worthwhile, then I think I'll be interested, right? Or I'll listen. I think, though, that the people who come at life as young people now, a lot of people come into the world, or don't come into the world, but as they're raised through high school and college, they come out of college and they decide, okay, I want to make money. How am I going to do that? It's exactly the wrong way of thinking about things, in my opinion. I want to make money is like, okay, well, who cares that you want to make money? That's not interesting. Everyone, given the choice of having more money or less money, would choose more money. So that makes you not interesting. So I think you have to ask, well, what is interesting about you, or what are you interested in? What kind of thing would you like to be part of? What kind of thing would you like to create? How can you help people? And I think that's the biggest question. And if you really ask that question with true interest in helping people or helping animals or helping the environment, or it could be that you just want to build beautiful sculptures and you think that maybe that's a way of helping people because they can look at your beautiful artwork. What can you as a human being produce, create, invent that's interesting, that you love to do, that won't feel like work? And people who go at life and focus on those things, Well, ironically, they tend to make a lot of money, ironically, but they also tend to really enjoy what they do, and therefore they do more of it, and they don't consider it work, and they don't feel stressed out, and they don't go, man, my work-life balance is out of whack,
One of the things that really interesting and intriguing is like you mentioned about like a lot of things that are not gonna be trained, right? So like how people think, what they care about, like are they a good person, or are they kind, blah blah blah, or like are they driven, are not going to be changed, but like the skills that you can teach. So when you pick the employee, you would pick the people, the self-motivator, so they would motivate themselves to become a better leader, better person. They want to work more because of like they want to be a leader at their environment or something. So curious about, does that only apply in Chipotle? Because I feel like if you are a lawyer, so like lawyer is trained, right? So like you have to go to law school, you have to do this and that. If you are saying like, I'm just going to go on the street and then pick a person with a good heart and then a hardworking person, and I'll come back and train them, become a lawyer, that's a lot of cost, right? So why I'm asking is like, as a younger person or younger professional in my career, like if I'm starting a company and like I only have a few options. If I'm a startup, I'm not going to be able to have a lot of money like the Google guys, right? So like to pay the best employees, to have the most competitive people come to work for me.
Right.
What am I going to be offering to, or like how am I going to attract the best talents when I have none?
Yeah. Well, I think the answer is with a great vision and with your own huge reservoir of enthusiasm about that vision. So if you want to build, and I'm just thinking about some of the companies that exist today, I mean, take like Instagram. If you wanted to invent Instagram, and I'm not even qualified to talk about anything high tech like this because I'm so low tech and I'm not even a social media guy, but you might say I've got this, or even Facebook back in the day, oh my gosh, I love the idea of connecting people on this Facebook thing, and we can all like learn about each other, and we can have this way of communicating through these neat new, this internet thing that just was kind of recently came out, because back when they started Facebook, the internet was rather new and maybe not so known to people. So it gave a way of people using that to really connect with each other and understand each other and say things and express themselves. And when that first started, I'm sure there was all this excitement about, hey, this could be huge. We could connect the whole world this way. And then if you get a few people in the room and go, guys or gals, hey, folks, come, friends, whatever it is, your friends that you're closest to. Maybe you think they're really bright. Hey, Grace, I want you to help me with this. Guess what I think we can do? We can change the whole world by helping people connect and unite, and it'll be great because we'll help people find lost loved ones. We'll help people share what's important to them and maybe find other friends that they wouldn't have otherwise met. And God, it's going to be amazing. Will you join me in helping to do this? I don't have any money, but we can do this together. And then if it's really successful, obviously we'll be in Fat City. It'll be great. Well, you might be like, yeah, I understand your vision. I love that vision. I want to be part of that vision. And that's how most great startups happen. I want to be part of what you're doing. I want to be part of what you are seeing, your vision. In fact, now it's not your vision anymore, Monty. I share your vision. Now it's my vision, and so now it's you and me, Grace. We're going to build Facebook. And then you have a friend. Well, Monty, I have this friend who's brilliant, who would love this. Can I get them involved? Yes, Grace, get them involved. Oh, okay. It's my friend Charles. Okay. Well, Charles would really love this. We sit down, we talk to Charles. We have this vision. Charles goes, oh my God, that's such an awesome vision. And it becomes not your vision, Grace, not my vision, Monty, but it becomes Charles's vision. And now Charles is on board, So it's like, if you find people who want to do what you're doing, believe in what you're doing, and in fact, believe in it so much that it's not what you're doing anymore, it's what they're doing, well, guess what? Money doesn't matter to them because they're building something that they want to be part of, that they believe in, that they think will be great, that they think will be huge. And sure, it's fine that back in their mind, they might think, this could be huge. We could make a lot of money. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with thinking that. But the point is, it can't just be about making money, because making money is in and of itself empty. If it was, and some people get into like, hey, I want to be a bond trader, or I want to be a stock trader. I just want to make a ton of money. I don't really care if I produce any value. Well, you can make money that way. I would say that you can't become very satisfied that way if that's all you're doing. If you follow your heart and what you really want to do, there's a lot of fertile soil there for you to grow something wonderful. And the money will follow if it's something that's valuable to people.
I'm curious about, how did you teach yourself these value? And like, as you mentioned, values are hard to teach. those are like things that you have to just have. Curious, how did you teach yourself? And then who is on your personal board of advisors? Like, who do you consult your business decision or life decision with?
I don't really have a board of advisors, so to speak. I've got a lot of smart people that I know who are friends, who I trust, and I would call different people for different reasons. I usually call the person who I think will challenge me the most on that issue.
Really?
Yeah, oddly. It's kind of a little masochistic. But for instance, when I wrote my book, the people I first shared my book with, well, first of all, I shared my book with some people who I thought would help support my effort to continue writing it. But then as I got better, I thought, okay, now I'm going to start sharing it with some people who are just really tough critics and who can't possibly lie to me. I've got a few friends who they can't say something. They don't even know how to say something nice. They just, what they really believe comes blurting out of their mouth.
Gosh.
And so I sent it to them. And then when I got really positive feedback from really tough audience, I thought, hey, I'm onto something. This might be getting really good. So, but in terms of how I got my values, I think maybe I was just lucky to be born into a family that I think my parents had really good values. I think that I wasn't exposed to television, which I think has a lot of bad values on it. I wasn't exposed to a lot of things that might have caused me to value things that weren't valuable, if you want to say it that way. And I think also I just was very lucky to have some really amazing experiences when I was very young. For instance, in the book, I talk about my time at Dairy Queen. I ended up interacting with and really falling in love with all these, frankly, homeless people, many of whom had mental illnesses because they were from the mental health facility nearby my Dairy Queen. And I ended up falling in love with these people because they were beautiful people. In most cases, I would say they were having what society would call very difficult lives. They didn't have any money. They usually didn't have friends or family that they really could relate to. They were often mentally ill. They were often depressed. They were hungry. They had almost every difficulty that you could have in society while still being, sort of alive and well, if you will. And yet what I found in them was these beautiful people. They were beautiful. They had beautiful eyes. They had beautiful hearts. When I talked to them, I was like, oh my God, I love this person. And so very quickly what I learned is that what I really loved about a human being had nothing to do with, it had nothing to do with sort of anything that you think matters. It didn't have to do with them having any money because they were broke. It didn't have to do even with them being mentally well because they weren't always mentally well at the moment. They were having a hard time. It didn't have to do with what home they owned because these guys didn't have, and gals, women and men, didn't have homes. And so what I learned is these people who had, quote unquote, and I say this in quotes, have had nothing. Okay, it turned out they had everything because they had everything inside. They had a beautiful heart. They had curiosity. They had a desire for things to be better, a desire to grow and blossom. But they had, along the way, hit some very difficult obstacles. Homelessness, drug abuse, mental illness, the death of family, loss of friendships, you name it, loss of jobs, loss of homes. They'd had all these quote unquote bad things happen to them. And I say quote unquote bad because I do not believe in the concept of bad or good. These are concepts I don't believe in, bad or good. I think they're useless and dangerous and misleading concepts. So that's another, I could write a whole book on that. Maybe I should, it would be fun. But, but
I would read it.
Yeah, thank you. So I learned from these people who had supposedly nothing. I learned that there was all this beauty inside. And I learned that when I saw that beauty and gave attention to them and asked them questions and brought curiosity to them, that they would blossom. They would physically sit up straighter. Their eyes would open more. They would smile more. They would actually become hungrier and want to eat. So I'd give them something to eat. They would become more ambitious. And by ambitious, what I mean is they would start to think that they can do things like, oh, you know what? I guess I can quit smoking cigarettes. I guess I can, start to get a habit of working a little bit and maybe earning some money and feeling the independence from having done so. Maybe I can find a place to live with some roommates that will help me. So they you could see that they very quickly started to see the possibilities that could exist for themselves that would improve their external circumstances. I emphasize the words external circumstances because there's this play in life of internal circumstances and external circumstances. So, or at least our internal state of wellness and our external circumstances. And people in society believe that there's a very tight relationship between external circumstances and our wellness. And it turns out that's not true. Okay, that's actually just not very true. And there are some incredible books that will tell you that. And I think one that comes to my mind is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. In Man's Search for Meaning, he basically talks about people in the Holocaust during one of the most horrific times in human history, and how people found a way to find meaning and to give of themselves and to have hope and dedicate themselves to the wellness of the people around them. And in that context of this most horrible external circumstances, found a reason to find warmth, brilliance, and love inside themselves and the people around them. So, and there are also, you've heard stories about people in prison who are in prison. I mean, you'd think it can't get much worse than that. But within prison, they get educated. They find philosophical truth. They grow. They blossom. They write books. They become smarter. They get out of prison and then have a lot to give to the world. Or even if they don't get out of prison, they might have a lot to give to the world through their communication. So external circumstances really aren't what creates internal wellness. What creates internal wellness, I believe, is the practice of acceptance. The practice of accepting who we are, the practice of accepting that things are as they are, and accepting that so that we can then be a positive beacon for change if we'd like to create change. But that act of trying to accept things and come to sort of a friendship with reality, okay, to understand the truth, to start to love the truth, to become a friend of reality. Because if we're battling reality, we're losing, because reality is reality. We can't, if we battle it, we lose. If we don't believe the truth, it doesn't mean that it's not true. And so we have to sort of, I think, become friends with the truth, forgive the truth, forgive the things that hurt in us, forgive our own pain, forgive our inadequacies, forgive, so that we have a sense of acceptance of who we are, acceptance of the people around us. And from that acceptance grows compassion, understanding, love, wellness, and then ultimately empowerment, such that we can become a more powerful force for good or for change if we'd like to create change in the world.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing all these thoughts. I love it. My curiosity is, there are two parts. One part is how did you came up with this way of thinking? Because after chatting with many successful people, not everybody is happy. So they're because they have to work, and then there are a lot of work issues. They're personal side of things. Why do you think this way? Is that because you just don't watch TV and then
No. I watch TV now. I watch TV, and No, I think it's just, I'll tell you what, it's because I think the answer is I've always been very, very, very curious. I mean, I've been so curious that I've irritated people. My dad was irritated by me. I think my dad was irritated by me for years and years and years and years and years. It was only when he maybe became 50, 55, 60, and my father died at 75. But those last 10 or 15, 20 years, I really felt like he sort of loved me more. And I think he always loved me, but he was irritated by me. I think I'm probably a pretty irritating kid. I was too curious. I had too much energy. I was always asking questions. So I always had this hunger to understand the truth. I just want to know the truth. I want to know the truth even if I don't like it. I want to know the truth even if I don't understand it. I want to know it. I want to know it. I want to know it. And so I've always been super, super curious. And because I've been curious, I have looked for lessons everywhere and in everyone I've ever met. And everywhere I've ever looked, I look for lessons. So when I was meeting those people at Dairy Queen, it sounds like I was maybe a kid being really nice to some people who were hard on their luck. And yes, that's true. But really, I was learning from people who had vast experience that I didn't have. I had never been homeless. I had never lost my family. I had never lost a loved one at that time, probably, or at least not many. I had never been without shelter. I'd never been hungry. I had never been, sort of demonstrably mentally ill. I was a young boy, I was a 15-year-old boy. I had it good, you might say. And I was so curious what it was like to have these hardships, how they came about, what decisions these people had made that led to them being in a difficult external circumstance, whether they'd change it if they could, what they believe now. And so I ask questions. And, I've also read books. I've read a lot of books on Eastern philosophy. I've read books on Christianity. I've read books on other religions. But in those books, I might read a big, thick book on something, and I might find a few things in it that I find, oh my gosh, that is so true. And I didn't know that. I didn't have that way of I didn't ever look at things in that way. So you get these aha moments throughout life of little bits of oh my gosh, oh wow. And what really turns me on is knowing the truth. And so to me, it's like fresh air blowing over me when I understand the truth. Sometimes that truth is inconvenient. Sometimes it's, for instance, I'll tell you a very inconvenient truth to recognize is to say, wow, I think my dad, although he might have loved me, I think he didn't like me very much when I was a little kid. I walked hard on the floor. It pissed him off. I asked too many questions. It really pissed him off. His neck would tighten up when I got near him. I think he didn't like me much some of the time. That's really hard to realize. But if it's the truth, it still will help set you free. Because then what you can do is say, wow, he didn't really like me much. Then you can, of course, go, oh my gosh, why didn't he like me? And then you can say all the bad things about me. I walked too loud. I interrupted. I talked too much. I asked too many questions. Did I really ask too many questions? Or could I just say, my dad had a disposition such that it was difficult for him to handle, given his present state of mind. Maybe his marriage wasn't what he wanted it to be. Maybe he had internal demons that he was battling. Maybe he was depressed at times. Maybe he was upset. He had his own self-centeredness, like we all do, which made it very difficult for him to be a completely loving father to a vivaciously, incredibly curious, obnoxiously well, I shouldn't even pathologize myself like that. But to a kid who's got tons of questions, who's really curious and wants to ask questions and wants all of his dad's knowledge, it was too much for him. But since it was too much for him, I felt pain, and I still feel pain when I think about being rejected by my father. He didn't reject me and kick me out of the house. He didn't hit me. He didn't say I was a jerk, but his neck would stiffen. I could tell he didn't want me around sometimes. That hurt me. But it's true that he was doing the best he can as a father, probably. It was true that I was doing the best I could as a son. It's not that he did something wrong. He just did what he did. It's not that I did something wrong in reacting by being hurt. Of course, it's because I was a well-wired human that I was hurt. It should hurt if your dad doesn't like you, right? That should hurt. I mean, why shouldn't it? We're biologically trained to make sure our parents like us. Otherwise, they kick us out of the nest and we die. Every animal, not, whether it's a goose or a human, you want to make sure your parents take care of you. And so you adapt. You adapt in ways to try to cultivate acceptance by your parents such that they don't boot you out of the house and you freeze in the cold. I mean, at least that doesn't happen much in modern society because it's illegal, among other things. But still, you don't want to be rejected by your parents. But anyway, so if you're really looking for truth in the world and you really want to find it, and you try really hard, there's lots of it out there. Now, there's lots of things that aren't true. But if you become a good filter of it, then you develop more and more and more. And I also wrote in journals my whole life. So I wrote and wrote and wrote. I did a lot of journaling. I haven't done it in the last 15 years. But before then, I filled books and books and books and books of stuff, just writing stuff, since I was a little kid. I mean, 30 big, thick books full of writing. And so I was always writing about stuff. So it gave me a chance to really sort of, when you write something, it's more formal than if you just think it. And so I could sort of see my feelings as I wrote them. Do you know what I mean? And so I became more familiar with them.
Reflect.
And I could reflect and I could see patterns. And it's not that I even went back and read the book so often, but it's like, you remember, oh my gosh, I remember writing that before. I guess this isn't the first time I felt that. So, but anyway, I'm sort of rambling, but how did I get these values? I looked and looked and looked for the truth, and I found a lot of truth in my life. That's not to say I'm some arbiter of all things true, but I think that I have a very good grasp on reality. And the closer one gets to the truth, in my opinion, the more they become free, because the truth to me is good.
I feel like actually conversation with you, it's even richer than the book, because when I was listening to it, I feel like each different person, each different audience will take whatever that's in their mind, right? So for me, when I was reading it, I was assuming this is a management leadership book, right? So the more pieces I got were more towards how do you become a better manager? How do you become a better leader? And all that. Chatting with you kind of opens up different side of things that I was kind of missing when I was listening to it. I feel like I was missing those things that you were saying, but those are also really necessary because kind of shape you into who you are, which makes you a better leader. Just telling us how to do it or what's the action, because for each different person's case, the actions are very drastically different, but the philosophy behind it or the way of thinking is probably the things that will guide us longer than just tell us what to do or whatever.
Really, to be honest, when I first wrote the book, it was more than twice as long as it ended up being. And my editor helped me cut it down a lot, which is great. I wanted it to be concise. I didn't want it to be boring. And of course, there are many sentences in that book that if I could write a whole book about many of the sentences in that book. I mean, for sure, right? It's when I talk about truth, love, and God being basically the same thing, I could go, I'll
put it on there. So
no, it's great. It's wonderful. I can see it. I think that's really fun. But I could go on and on and on and on and on about what that means, right? About really what that means, on and on. In fact, one of my maybe faults is I can go on and on about darn near anything probably in that book. But there's subjects that fascinate me. Even the concept I said earlier of there being good and bad are not real things. Those aren't real. Those are human constructs to try to quickly label something much, much more complicated. If we think of a bad person, oh my God, that guy's a bad person. Well, that's totally an inaccurate description. And I don't even care how many bad, quote unquote, bad things that person's done. To say they're bad is obviously incomplete. What any person is a ball of trillions of cells and neurons that is vastly complicated. So there's no chance of describing anyone with one word, for starters, let alone describing anyone with a word that is so conclusive. And in fact, language generally, I think, is a very fortunate and very unfortunate tool. It's wonderful that we have language because I can say, I can say, Grace, could you please pass the ketchup? And you're going to probably pass me the ketchup. So that's very handy. And it's handy to say, Grace, I'm going to be home at 3:00. Would you be willing to help me at 3:00 till 4:00? Yeah, or we can do this podcast from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. So we can organize our lives, and it's handy. So language is very, very handy. But language is also very, very unfortunate because it's loaded with labels. In fact, every word is a label, some more than others. So yeah, so if you were to say the word chair, you might picture a great big cushy, lazy boy. And someone else might picture an office chair, and someone else might picture a small stool out, So again, the word is not, it's helpful, but it's not entirely accurate. So you can say that about any word. And certainly you can say that about language generally. So when we're saying words, we're gathering something from what the other person says, but we're not gathering exactly what they said, okay? Because they're saying these words meaning something different than what we're receiving. But because the limitations of language, because language is so limited, it brings more and more importance to curiosity, to questioning, to an open heart, to the desire to really understand the depth of the truth that's in this world, which is an incredibly complicated, nuanced, difficult thing to understand. So as human beings, all of us, I think, at some level, all of us have a curiosity for the truth, but some of us much more so, and some of us much less so. And so I guess I just question a lot of things. And through questioning it, you very quickly find that we humans, especially society's social values, are generally totally full of crap, full of baloney. I mean, it's just what we think is important really isn't what's important. What we think isn't important is, as often as not. So I think if you question all that and you really are curious about it, it's almost funny how silly we are, we human beings, as a race.
By trade, what kind of leader do you think you are? So like some leader are marketing focused people, some are sales, or some are product people. Like you were originally a lawyer, and in terms of like the technical skills, like what do you think you bring to the table?
I don't know. I mean, any of the technical skills I have. I mean, look, I'm a very logical thinker. I'm trained as a lawyer. I'm really good with numbers. I'm a good math guy. I'm very logical. I'm very quick to make decisions. I tend to make good decisions because I tend to be able to analyze a whole bunch of information and very quickly decide what's the best way to go. I'm good. I think I've got the skill of being able to, convince people that the right way to go is the right way to go. And I have a really good way of getting people behind me to go there. And so I'm really good at I think, galvanizing a whole large group of people in one direction such that we're all paddling in the same direction. So, but really the thing that matters most about me as a leader is that I have an enormous compassion and love for human beings. I understand them and want them to be at their best. I can't stand it when I see someone who is not doing the best with what they've got. Okay. And so and I also really love them. And so since I love them and I want them to be at their best, and I can see a better way for them to be at their best, I tend to be a really helpful advocate to help people be the best version of themselves. That's the thing that matters more than anything else. And yes, I think it helps that I'm numerate. I think it helps that I'm logical. I think that helps that I'm a smart person, that I can read very quickly. I can, I couldn't always read quickly. I've just read so darn much. Eventually I had to get good at it. So I've gained a lot of skills along the way. I've read a lot. I've thought a lot. I spend my whole life trying to become wiser and trying to become more knowledgeable and to see what's really true. And I can bring those things that I've learned to help in certain situations, for instance, leadership situations, or to help a problem that a company has. So I tend to be able to very quickly, I guess recently one of my good friends, who I think is one of the smartest people I know, and he actually worked with me at Chipotle. I said, well, why do you keep asking me to help you? What do you think is so strong about me as a leader? He goes, oh man, that's easy. He goes, you're the person who can go into a room and find a super complicated situation and right away net out what the problem is. It's like you find the issue really quickly. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Well, that was one of the things that in law school you had to do. In law school, you had to look through, these long fact patterns and find out basically, what's the issue? Like, what's the legal issue that's going to be the tough issue? There's a lot of obvious stuff, but what's going to be the tough issue? I would quickly find that tough issue. So I think that there are some ways that my mind works that's very, very logical, and my mind is very quick to dismiss the things that I think are not the issue. And so if I hear people in a meeting, for example, talking about a bunch of things that aren't the issue, I'll say, guys, that's not even the issue. I've got no patience for something that is not the issue. I've got no patience for something that's not going to help us resolve the problem. In fact, I can be annoying in that way, I think, because sometimes I'm like, stop. Why are we talking about all this stuff that's irrelevant? That's not relevant. Let's get to what's relevant. And here's what's relevant. So I think my speed at finding the relevant point helps me to solve the relevant point. And also, I'm just fast at making decisions because I hate being slow at making decisions. And so, and also, I believe that making 100 decisions, using the information you have in front of you and making the best decisions you can, and taking some risk of being wrong by making them quickly, is better than making 3 correct decisions that are 100% correct. It's better to make 100 decisions that are 95% correct, because if you make a decision that's wrong, you can unmake it. You can make a new one to go from there. So, but beyond all the skills I have that might make me a good leader, the thing I think is most important is that I actually care about the people I'm leading, that I love them, that I care about them, that I want to see them at their best, that I can quickly come up with ways that I can perhaps help them be at their best, that I can help remove obstacles that are in their path that are causing them to not be the best version of themselves, that I can help empower them, which, and I talk about empowerment a lot in the book, and I give a very specific definition, which you've read. And that definition to me is a very important definition, because if you look at that definition, you can decide what part of that definition is missing, and you can correct that. And if you correct that, you're going to have empowered people. And guess what's more powerful than anything in the world, people-wise, at least? I don't want to say it's more powerful than volcanoes and the universe or something, but the most powerful thing we as people have in the world is cooperation. Unity, wanting something, all of us together, wanting something. That's what's powerful. Okay. I mean, and there's even famous leaders in history who have been bad people, but have been able to harness a huge army around their bad vision and have gone and done powerfully bad things. I use these words in quotes because how I feel about those terms. But likewise, if you're able to galvanize a whole bunch of people around something that's very positive and that will help your organization or help humanity, that's a hugely powerful thing.
How do you unite people? So I think different people may want different things. Just I feel like in terms of taking actions, you are great at numbers and you're thinking very logically. I wouldn't say it's conflict with the things that we talked about earlier, but I feel like you're also very charismatic. You are emotion driven. You actually listen to people. I feel like those are two different brain or two different management style.
In some ways, I don't believe in management style. And
Right.
let me tell you what I mean by that. I mean, you're right. There are management styles. There's no doubt that they exist, but I don't believe that that's what's important. I believe that people can come about management or leadership with in lots of different ways, right? Some can be loud and boisterous. I might be more that way. Some can be very quiet and contemplative. Some can be bossy, and some can be really polite. All of those different approaches actually can be successful. All of those different approaches can be unsuccessful. The thing that creates success isn't that style. It's which leader actually cares about their people and can empower them. Can espouse a great vision, can understand what their people want, and can help their people get what they want. Because when we think about what people want for a moment, so let's go back to that, because you mentioned people want all different things. Well, not really. Okay, I don't think people really want different things. I believe that what everyone really wants is to be seen, valued, loved, and understood. That's what we really want. We want to be seen, or we want someone to see our heart. And then we want them to love us. We want them to accept us. We want them to understand us. We want them to say, even if I'm in a bad mood and I just said something nasty, we want them to see through that and go, I know why he said that. I know why he said something nasty, because he's in a bad mood, but I see his heart and I love him. And that's what we want, right? We want to be understood. Seen, valued, loved, and understood. That's what we want. So if we can help people to be seen, valued, loved, and understood, then they are getting what they want, and they will feel better and start to grow and blossom. In the book, I talk about how it is the natural state of any living being to grow and blossom, okay? To become more and wiser and richer mentally. So what I get my kicks out of as a leader is finding when I see someone who isn't getting the soil they need, the sunlight they need, the water they need, I try to give them that ingredient. Now, you can analogize those ingredients. For instance, the leader's goal is to take a seed, which means a person in my analogy, and give it good soil, good soil, which means a good culture, good external circumstances or encouraging circumstances. That's soil. Okay. Put it in good soil. And then you give it plenty of, make sure it gets plenty of sunlight, which is a vision. So it has a vision to grow towards that sunlight. And you give it plenty of water. And the water is leadership, support, care, love, understanding, challenging. And if you give people those things, they'll naturally grow. A leader should look out into their workforce. And if they find any evidence that someone isn't growing or isn't at their best, that should bother the leader. The leader should say, I want Grace to be at her best. She doesn't seem at her best today. Let me talk to her. Grace, you seem down the last couple of days. I'm so sorry to see that. Are you okay? Well, I'm fine. No, really, Grace. Are you okay? What can I help you with? Well, actually, it's been a lousy couple of days because my dog died. Oh, God, I'm really sorry your dog died. Wow, that is hard. Wow, well, take the day off if you want. No, it's okay. I'd rather be here work. But if I just see you and see that you're going through something, care enough to ask about it, offer my help, and notice when you're not at your best, Grace, guess what? You're going to be more at your best. You're going to go, wow, I can't believe he just came over and actually noticed and cared about me as a person. That's kind of cool. I feel better just being seen and understood and loved and cared for. The leader's first and largest job is to create that culture in the workplace where people, everybody, is seen, valued, loved, and understood.
I think a lot of the listeners are like young leaders or like people that are like willing to lead. But before we get to that point, as an employee, as someone who worked for someone, like what's your advice for them to be their best self? You were like a young lawyer at a law firm, right? Like after like law school, you basically told us about like the actions that you took, which is like taking on the smaller but hard cases that like you get a chance to be the lead lawyer, or like you didn't select the fancy cases, you took the hard ones, you took the smaller ones, which you can get more practice. And then when you got to a law firm, you sort of like gave the associates some chances to get them exposure. And then at Chipotle, you become like undercover to go through the training program that like the workers are going through. And those are actions that I find really interesting and really are the things that like most people don't do.
Yeah, that's true.
I just want to understand, like, as a younger person, what should I do? Like, how can I implement what you just said into my daily process?
Yeah. I mean, I would start with whatever it is you're doing now with your life. Do it with all your heart. Don't do it to try to get to the next step.
Right.
Because you aren't God and you don't know. I mean, you're not God, but I can talk about that later. But you're not the whole God. You don't know the whole thing. So you don't necessarily know what's best for you, except that I can guarantee that what's best for you is to live in the present and do your very best at what you're doing right now and put your heart and soul and love into it, because then you will do a better job at it. You will have a higher quality day. Okay. And if you have a higher quality day, 7 days in a row, that's a higher quality week. And if you have 4 higher quality weeks, that's a high quality month. Okay. And if you have 52 high quality weeks, or 12 high quality months,
year.
that's a high quality year. Okay. And then if you keep doing that for your whole life, you have a high quality life. I hear too often that people are like, oh man, this job is like a dead end job, man. I can't wait till I get something better. I can't wait till I get something better. Why should someone give you something better if that's your attitude about what you're doing right now? Why should somebody who gets a gift and it's a little gift, and if they don't like it, they go, there's a little gift. I don't like little gifts. Well, then why would you give a big gift if they can't appreciate a little gift? Okay. So that little gift is whatever you're doing right now. It's a gift. Whatever job you have right now, that's a gift. Whatever somebody is willing to, if someone's willing to pay you money to do something and it's your first job, be delighted. Do it with all your heart. Do a great job. They'll notice that you do a great job. And if they don't notice that you're doing a great job, at least you'll notice that you're doing a great job. And if you don't notice, somebody else will notice and they'll ask you to do more. Why will they ask you to do more? Because you're worthy of doing more, because you've got experience in doing what you're doing. You're getting better at it. You're growing, you're blossoming, and you can handle more. And when you can handle more, you'll get more. There's a concept in the universe that nature abhors a vacuum. Nature doesn't like a vacuum. What does nature do with a vacuum? It fills it. If you are an incredibly hardworking person that gives your love and attention and tries to be excellent at what you're doing and bring goodness into it and find a way to do it really well, you're doing something really, really well. There are other things in the world that need to be done. That's the vacuum. Nature is going to absorb people who can do greatness into things where greatness is needed. It just happens.
2 questions there. One is, do you think Chipotle is successful because of like how you run it? On the other hand, I'm just also curious about like, because of like some random event, like, so I think Chipotle has 2 parts. One part is like the management and the other part is about the food itself, right? Like, so for example, I think the Chipotle guy have to see that you've done a good culture at your law firm. And then that scene part is like, they use your law service and stuff like that. So like, I feel like I'm producing quality content. But like in the society, like are looking at a lot of entertainers. Are those things are gonna like change people's life for better? I don't know. It's sort of like the television. Like the hottest show may not be like the most educational stuff or the most positive stuff.
Yeah.
For my good work to be seen by multiple people or like by more people or whatever, I have to do, for example, advertising. I have to educate, like I have to sort of like promote myself over my channel. But on the other hand, like when I was looking at the society, they're not really looking at this kind of like, like the more educational side of things or more like things that I believe that are good. Like, how do I even convince them? Like, I mean, I don't know them personally, right? So
okay,
like,
lots. I understand. I really understand what you're saying. Lots of struggle, lots of wondering, gee, what about why is that selling? What I'm doing is really neat and good and real. We got to silence our minds and not worry about what others think about anything for a minute. Let's bring quality and excellence to whatever it is we do. There is generally an assumption that, like when people talk about me, for example, they might say, Monty Moran once used to be a janitor. He worked at Dairy Queen. Then he was a janitor. Then he was a car part salesman. Then he sold then he was a car mechanic. And then he went to college. And then finally, then he was a lawyer for 10 years and became a CEO of his law firm. And then he was CEO of Chipotle or co-CEO of Chipotle. Like they look at that as the high point. Well, that wasn't the high point. It wasn't the low point. It was just, that's what was happening between my ages of, let's say, 39 and 51 or whatever it was, 38 and 51, whatever, when I was at Chipotle. That's what was happening during that point in my life. That wasn't better. It wasn't anything. It was just, that's what I was doing during that point of my life. When I was a janitor, mopping floors and cleaning up poop, in bathrooms, that was not a less worthy time of my life. It wasn't a less educational time of my life. It wasn't less at all. I made less money, but even that doesn't matter. During that time of my life, it was a profound job during which I learned a lot, during which I felt feelings, during which I learned the truth, during which I was curious, during which I met lots of old people because it was a senior citizen center. And they taught me things and I felt beautiful relationships with them. It was a rich, rich time of my life, even though I made $5 an hour. It was $5 an hour after tax. So that was good. But so that was a rich time of my life. It wasn't less rich than being CEO of Chipotle. Now, it's true that being CEO of Chipotle, I was able to influence a lot more people. And that was wonderful. That was very satisfying. Any place I go and put my attention now, though, if I'm putting my attention and I'm putting my best into it, it's going to yield positive results because I have something to give. Okay? Each of us has something to give. Our job as human beings is to give that which we can give. So let's not look at what we're doing and say, I'm just doing a little useless thing. Let's say, what can I give today to help those who are around me, to help the situation I'm in, to help the situation others are in? What can I do to help? How can I help? And if we ask, what can I do to help? What value can I bring? How can I be of service? If we just ask those questions every day, and then we bring the skill we have, whatever skill we have, we may be less skilled at some point in our life and more skilled later in our life. But whatever skill and effort and goodness we can bring, let's bring it to the situation in front of us. And if we do that, we will find more and more and more ways to give, to serve, and to be of help. And as we do that, it is a certainty that we will have a fulfilled life if that's our focus. It'll be a certainty that we'll be successful if that's our focus. Now, will that success mean that we have $100 billion? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Will the success mean that we have $7, but we're really, really happy? Maybe. If we just trust that it is the highest and best use for us to give the most we can to ourselves and those around us and our world, to serve, to give, to be of service. If we trust that, and I do trust that, okay, then great things will happen to us. Life will unfold in a way that will be rich and interesting and excellent. And it will also have pain and suffering and anxiety too. I promise you that becoming a CEO is no solution for anxiety, pain, and suffering. It will not diminish your anxiety, pain, and suffering. It will not diminish the hardship in your life. It will add interesting things. It will be challenging and fun and exciting and rewarding, but it will also be the converse of those things. The human experience is difficult. We feel difficult feelings. It's hard being a human being. We have all these nerves. Things offend us. It's offensive when we're too hot. It's offensive when we're too cold. It's offensive when someone yells at us. It's offensive when someone goes, I don't like you, or acts like they don't like us, or cuts us off in traffic and flips us off. It hurts. So it hurts to be a human. But that doesn't mean it's not worth being a human. It is worth being a human. It's a wonderful, wonderful gift to be a human being with all these nerves and cells and all this potentiality. But let's use our potentiality to give the most we can to others, because that addition to the unity of the human creature, of the human race, and of animals too, and the environment, like being a very positive participant in this universe is something too few people are trying to do, okay? And those who do it are having such wonderful success. You just have to define success correctly. And success, I think, means, becoming the best version of yourself through growth and openness and love and creativity and curiosity and hard work.
I'm curious about, in terms of actions, I feel like a lot of things that you've done there's just like a lot of actions that you took. How do you know that's like that thing to do?
When you get into a new situation, ask the obvious questions, okay? You will be guided by the obvious questions. When I first went to Chipotle as an official employee, so this is after I was sort of general counsel for 10 years, but I finally joined as an employee in 2005. Mm-hmm. I went in to the restaurants and I thought, oh my God, what can I do? There's hundreds of restaurants already, Chipotle's. There's thousands of employees. What can I do? What can I do to help? Okay, that's an obvious question, right? I mean, what could be more obvious? Hey, I'm the new president and COO, that was my title initially. I arrive on the scene. I've got this, I'm getting paid a lot of money. I'm in a very high position. I better do something, right? I mean, right? Talk about obvious. So I go, what can I do? Okay, so you ask, what can you do? Well, I could clean every counter I came in front of. I could tell people, hey, that taco isn't made right, or hey, that burrito's not rolled right. Okay, that's not going to be very useful, because anyone could do that who knows how to roll a burrito. What can I do? And I thought, well, if I can help create a higher quality general manager in every restaurant. So if I can get the best possible general managers in every restaurant with the best training, the best, most encouraging circumstances, the best tools to do the job, that is the thing I can do that will help this company the most, because a great manager will hire better people, empower those people, run better throughput, have better food cost, take better care of their equipment, calibrate it properly, take better care of their FF&E, the equipment and the fixtures and the furnishing, keep the heat at the right level, keep the music at the right level, create a great customer experience. It's like they'll do it all. I just need to help create the very, very best manager I can. And so as I talked about in the book, I set about doing that. And how to do it was obvious when I kept asking obvious questions. For instance, hey, all of our managers are guys, mostly men, mostly white people who have prior fast food experience. And we have these crew who are men and women, mostly Hispanic, really awesome at their jobs, but very, very few of them ever become managers, even though they're much, much, much better at what they're doing than their managers. Why are we doing this? So I asked HR, why are we doing this? Well, we got to get people with experience. Why? Why do we need experience? Turns out we don't. We don't need experience. We can teach someone to do it. What's better? Okay, someone with fast food experience. What is fast food experience, Grace? What is it? What is fast food experience?
Someone gave me something that like in a really short speed, and that could be just like eat right away or something.
Yeah. I mean, do you think of delicious, wonderful, excellent food?
That was not the first thing come to my mind.
I'm just asking what comes to your mind. Don't overthink it. No. The answer is no. You think of something that's uninspiring, mediocre, probably cold by the time you get it, and handed to you by someone who probably didn't care much and who wasn't paid much and doesn't really want to be there. Okay. That's fast food experience. Okay. People who work at a place that has mediocre food that doesn't really want to be there. Often, not always, often. Okay. So we hired for people who had that experience. We wanted people with that experience serving mediocre food really fast, that's really cheap with bad ingredients. That's what we were looking for. Why? The answer is we shouldn't be. So instead of that, what I said is, hey, instead of hiring people from the outside who have this experience, let's look for people, first of all, who have the right characteristics to be excellent. People who care, who are motivated and ambitious, infectiously enthusiastic, happy, hospitable, presentable, whatever. Okay. Let's hire for the characteristics, because you can't train those characteristics. If you hire the wrong characteristics, you're stuck with the wrong characteristics forever, right? You're not going to fix the characteristics, but you can train someone, because training someone to be a manager at Chipotle is not very difficult. I mean, it takes some time and you have to teach things, but it's something that most people can learn. So you get someone excellent and then you teach them that. So that's what we did. So we started hiring people instead of for their experience, we hired for characteristics. Also, we started promoting from within, promoting the very, very excellent people we already had in our ranks. Okay. So over the years, our manager workforce changed. They were much, much brighter. They were much more diverse in terms of ethnicity. There were more women. So it became women and men more equally. Okay. It became the people who were rising into that position were excellent because they grew up from excellent crew people who we knew were excellent, who we knew showed up every day, who we knew cared, who we knew had a nice smile, who we knew cared about the customers, who we knew cooked great food. Okay, we hired them and started moving them up. So we started promoting tens of thousands of people, 10,000 people a year into management positions. It was obvious, but you had to ask the basic questions. You had to ask the obvious questions that everyone else was trying to be too sophisticated to ask. But it had an enormous impact, and it made the culture much more fun. And it brought a lot more enthusiasm because people are like, hey, wow, they're going to promote us crew people to be the future managers. And then the other thing is we wanted to make sure that people focused on making the people around themselves better. That was a goal. We're going to promote people who help other people the best. We're going to promote people who make others better.
I feel like you always kind of like have a new way of thinking things. So for example, you went into the lawyer firm, you just questioned the big question about like, why aren't these like young associate like being sit in front of the clients, right? Like, so that associates hate it, the partner get all the relationships, like, and no one's like motivated at work. And like, I feel like you think really differently. And like, I think like one is like, how do you always think outside of the traditional way?
If we tap into our inner curiosity and we allow ourselves to really be fresh, it's almost like you want to be reborn as a child every day. What do little kids do? Well, little kids ask questions. Little kids don't think that they know the answer, so they try to learn the answer. As we grow into adults, we start to think we know. Guess what? We still don't. If you look at all the knowledge there is to have out there, let's just say it's sort of a billion pieces of information that comprise the knowledge we can learn. It's more than that. It's a trillion. Trillions, hundreds of trillions, whatever. So when we're a kid, let's say we know one trillionth of it. And we don't think we know anything, so we ask questions and we're curious. That's great. That's what makes sense to do that. That's why kids are so wonderful. Hey, what's that? Hey, what's that? Can I touch that? Oh, ouch, that's hot, So kids learn. And they bring freshness. That's why we love kids. Oh, look at that. Oh, look how he's interacting with that dog. Look how he doesn't even know. Oh, he's petting it. He looks a little nervous. It's fun to watch kids because they're so fresh. They're so curious. As we get older, let's say now we know 3 1/trillionths of what there is to know. Somehow, by going from 1 1/trillionth of what there is to know to 3 1/trillionths of what there is to know, we all of a sudden think we know. We don't. We don't really know much more than we knew as babies in terms of the grand scheme of things. We still don't know shit from apple butter compared to what there is to know. So I don't feel like I know much. I still feel like I'm a little child who has this huge buffet of things before me to learn and experience, and has experienced so little of it. Now, other people look at me and go, wow, you've had a lot of experiences. Yes, as compared to human beings, I've probably had quite a rich experience. I've learned a lot. I've done a lot. I've worked hard, all that stuff. But still, I don't know jack shit compared to what there is to know out there in the world. And because of that, I bring a curiosity every day. I am a child. I'm just a big little boy. I'm a little boy that's 6'4". I'm a little boy that has a driver's license. I'm a little boy who's allowed to vote. But I'm still like a curious little boy. And everyone who knows me, they'll say things like, oh my gosh, you're such a kid. They say that to me. And I always take that as a compliment, even if they don't mean it that way sometimes. But I can't tell that. It seems like they mean it that way. When people call me a kid, it's almost always a sweet thing. I bring that curiosity because I don't think I know that much. And people who know me well are always like, dude, you always go into everything thinking you're not going to do well. You always go into everything thinking you don't know enough. You always think you're not prepared. And yet you're the most prepared. Well, I was always the most prepared trial lawyer in every trial I did. But I didn't think I was the most prepared at that time. Back then, I thought I didn't know anything. I was scared to death, and I went in over-prepared. But I went over-prepared because I thought that I wasn't prepared. So I drove myself hard. But likewise, since I don't think I know that much about anything, I work really hard to understand everything when I come in front of it. I ask the obvious questions. I bring curiosity, openness to it. So I would suggest that the best answer to your question is, if you want to go have a huge impact in the world, assume you know nothing. Because assuming you know nothing does not erase the knowledge you have, okay? It can't hurt you to assume you know nothing. When I was hired to be president and CEO of Chipotle, Steve asked me to go down and talk to a group of area managers. The very first day I was there, I said, hey, go talk to them. I said, what do I say? He said, I don't know. Say whatever you want. And he pushed me into this room. And the first thing I said is, hey, guys, I'm the new president and COO. And guess what? They hadn't even been told that Steve was hiring a president. A lot of these people are like, whoa, really? My God, we have a new president. Oh, my God, really? And I said, hey, my name is Monty. I'm a lawyer. I know some of you know me because I did a lot of legal work for Chipotle. Now I'm president and CEO. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to be looking to you to help me. And, basically I started out by throwing myself on the in the guillotine and saying, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got some ideas, but I can't wait to get to know you guys. And those, you know what people thought after I said that? Instead of thinking he's an idiot, why is he here? They thought the opposite. They thought, oh, wow, he's bringing curiosity. He's not pretending he knows it all. How refreshing. He wants to learn from us. How wonderful. And guess what they did? They taught me. And I used what they taught me to get better. And every single person I met with at Chipotle, and I met with tens of thousands, and a lot of them were first day on the job, 6 months in the job, 3 years on the job. A lot of them were hourly employees who worked on the line. Most of them were hourly employees who worked on the line, the vast majority who I sat with. And I learned from all of them. From the person who's only been there one day, what could that person teach me about Chipotle? You'd think nothing, because I've been to Chipotle by then. I've worked at Chipotle at that time for 10, 11, 12 years, and I've been involved with Chipotle for 20, 21, 22 years. You'd say I must know it all. But that person who's only been there one day actually has a lot to teach me, because I don't know what it's like to be a person who's only been at Chipotle one day in that store in Illinois. And I might find out that our training wasn't great. I might find out that the way their boss hired them made them nervous. I might find out that they didn't feel confident in their ability on the job. I can learn a ton from that person, even though they technically shouldn't know any more than me, but they know what their experience is. And if they're having that experience, so are tens of thousands of people that we're hiring every year. I've got to fix that experience. I've got to make it better so that those tens of thousands of people we hire get an excellent training, get an excellent orientation, feel really confident in their ability, are ready to be empowered and do a great job. I approach life as if I don't know anything every day. And sometimes that makes me, it is hard to be me, because I'm nervous sometimes. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, every job I've ever gotten, I'm like, God, why did they hire me? I don't know anything. And that's funny. Like earlier you said that it seems like I'm really like nice and kind, but also like I'm a tough boss. You said that at the beginning. There is something tough about me. And you know what it is? It's that I expect that people I work with will be excellent, okay? And if they are working with me or for me and they're not excellent, I'm going to notice it and I'm not going to like it, okay? But it's not like I'm just going to be like, oh my God, you're not excellent. If someone's not excellent at what they're doing, well before I know they're not excellent, I'm going to be sitting with them going, hi, how are you doing? And then if I notice they're not excellent, I'm going to tell them, hey, the work you're doing, it really isn't great. But you seem like a really smart person. So let's talk about why your work's not great. What's going on? And I'm going to ask questions and be curious and hopefully bring the very, very best version of you out that I can so that you become excellent. Because guess who's going to be rewarded when you're excellent? Everybody. It's going to help me because you're going to be a great member of my team. How are you going to feel going home at night knowing you're excellent, knowing that I think you're excellent, knowing that you think you're excellent, knowing that the people you work with are excellent? I mean, the people you work with know that you're excellent. You're going to feel great. So if I help you become more excellent, you're a winner. I'm a winner. The company's a winner. If I allow you to continue to not be excellent and I tolerate it and think that's fine, you lose, I lose, the company loses. So yes, I'm a tough boss. I expect excellence, but I don't expect excellence just to grow on it, just to happen. I expect that we have to work towards excellence and that I have to help people become excellent by making sure that they are in the right position, that they have the right tools to do their job, that they have the right training, and that they have the right vision and the right and encouraging circumstances so that they can be at their best. But then, yes, I expect them to be excellent. And if they're not, I'm going to start asking questions.
One of the things that I find really difficult to do, and you did it, is how do you communicate that management style to everybody, like the store from Illinois or something? Like you can't travel to every store every day, right?
No, I did travel to lots and lots and lots and lots of stores, but no, I'm, you have meetings where you bring together your field leadership and you make sure that they understand the philosophy of the company. They understand the way you lead. You teach them to lead in a way that is also empowering to their teams. All right. So the goal is just you get everybody involved in understanding the kind of, your vision, where you're going and how you're going to get there. And you train all of them to do it the right way. And in the case of Chipotle, I mean, people really, really loved it. They were like, okay, this is awesome. I want to do this. I want to be able to build these restaurateur teams. I want to be able to help build teams of top performers who are empowered to achieve high standards. People got really excited about it. And I still get emails every single day. I mean, I don't mean sometimes. I mean, every day. And from people from my time at Chipotle going, oh my God, it was awesome. And we miss you. And thank you so much for what you taught me. And I mean, I get emails every day that bring me to tears because of this culture we created and how much it meant to people. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it's not something I could just do myself. I had to, make sure that culture was something we built so that everybody was rowing in the same direction.
Before we jump into a little fire round, I want to, give the audience, give the floor to you about talking about the new project.
I've got a docuseries called Connected, A Search for Unity, that's going to be coming out on PBS in February and March. It'll be on PBS channels throughout PBS stations throughout the entire country. And it's called Connected: A Search for Unity, and it's about, I basically fly around the country. I go to places that I think are very interesting and meet people from all different walks of life and try to basically extract their knowledge so that everybody can benefit from it. So it's not a political thing. It's not a religious thing. It's actually, you might call it real reality TV or reality documentary. So it's a docuseries about people that are going through all sorts of different kinds of struggles, basically because what I want to demonstrate is what I mentioned earlier, which is that all of us want to be seen, valued, loved, and understood. All of us are going through a life experience that's both difficult and wonderful. I think there's way too much division, apparent division, when you look at the media. There's thoughts about people don't love each other, don't care about each other, or that there's a lot of fighting and stuff. And I want to prove what I believe and what I've seen on the ground, which is that that's not true. There's a lot less division when people actually sit to get to know each other. They're very quick to love each other. They're very quick to care about each other. They're very quick to take up effort to help one another. And that's what I've discovered throughout my travels into these places. People from very different walks of life. The first episode is from the people in Canada who are the natives. So, you might say what we call, like we say sometimes American Indian, but these are Canadian Indian. So they like to call themselves the first people or natives. But I went up to the Blackfoot Nation and sat with them because they've got, if you look what the media says about them, well, they've got the highest teenage pregnancy, highest depression, highest suicide, highest alcoholism, lowest education, more high school dropouts. They've got the market cornered on a lot of bad statistics, quote unquote bad statistics. But what's really going on up there? Well, what's really going on up there is you have beautiful people who are incredibly wise, who have this amazing wisdom that all of us could learn so much from. And so just like I sat one-on-one with 20,000+ people at Chipotle and learned from each person and tried to give that wisdom to everybody, now I'm going around the country and sitting down with people from different parts of around the continent, I should say, and sitting down with people from different walks of life and trying to give that wisdom so we can all benefit from it. And so in all of these episodes, I'm really showcasing the power of the human spirit, the power of human camaraderie and unity in a way that I think will help all of us to unite more as a cooperative human race.
Amazing. So we're at the last part of our episode. So I'm going to do a quick fire round. So
Please.
First of all is, what's your favorite book?
Yeah, probably The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
It's funny, there's all these faces flashing in front of me.
Well, you can name 10.
I can't name a person because I would say the biggest impact in my career was the homeless people at Dairy Queen.
Who would you invite to your dinner party?
That's a big dinner party if I invite the whole crew of Chipotle, but that would be awesome. The homeless people at Dairy Queen, that would be awesome. I think I would invite to a dinner party the people who I thought would most appreciate a wonderful dinner and who I could learn from.
I love it. All your answers are so unique. Where can we find you when you are not at work?
Running, swimming, hiking, trying to be outside probably.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. So so great to have you on the show.
Oh, and I should say, if you want to get a hold of me, loveisfree.com. Loveisfree.com.
Oh yeah, I'll totally link that to
Okay, cool.
to the website. Yeah.
Awesome.